Um, so it's just something that I've just really focused on this year, and I sat back and reflected on my own teaching and just sort of what were the problem areas that I felt I could develop in my own teaching, maybe share that across our academy and help others. And one of the main problems that I thought I had, mainly out on the sports field in PE, or sometimes in the classroom as well, is that from whenever I see lessons, or many of the lessons I taught, I quite often had the same students answering the questions. And sometimes as a teacher, I think you go into your comfort zone and you may pick the same students, or it may be whereby you ask a question to the group and you may only have the same students putting their hands up. And for me, I felt that wasn't good enough really, because I just wasn't engaging the rest of the class and the periphery of the class. So you'd only typically get what I would see, or what I would do in my lessons, get 2 or 3 responses in a, maybe during a plenary or a mini plenary, from the same students. And obviously as well, being out on the field, sometimes when we're assessing students via plenaries or mini plenaries, I just wanted to know, how could we capture where the learning of all of the students was at that moment in time. And it's very difficult out on the field sometimes, so I just sat down and thought, what ways could I maybe improve this area in my teaching? So I asked myself these questions: how can I, as a teacher, indicate the progress of every single student rather than just those 2 or 3? How can I engage all of the students all of the time in every activity? How can I capture all of their progress in an instant? Because for me, I feel as a teacher it's important to capture their progress as quick as we can and as instantly as possible. And I just wanted to ensure that all students contributed to the lesson, again, rather than these 2 or 3. So I started looking at something called whole class response systems, and it comes from something that I seen Dylan Williams talking about in one of his talks, and it inspired me really to motivate me to improve this area of my teaching. And basically what a whole class response system is, it involves eliciting a response from every student in the class at any one time, and I mainly use them during mini plenaries or at the end of a lesson plenary. So I started looking at how could I elicit a response from everybody in an instant, and I developed lots of different strategies that I'm going to share with you during this presentation. Hopefully you can take them away and maybe use them in your classes, out on the field, or even in a classroom. And they're very simple techniques that you may have used before, and I call them back pocket teaching, things that I can whip out my back pocket and just use straight away to see where the progress of the lesson is and where my students are up to, and tackle any misconceptions. And this has helped in a lot of ways really. It's helped to engage all of my students in the learning process and focus their attention on where they're at any one point. And I really do feel it's increased the learning of my students as well. They constantly know where they're at, and they understand that these class response systems will show them where they're learning as well, and how to develop and improve them. It really does help with formative assessment, because many of these whole class response systems will give you an instant assessment to your class, and allow you to cater the learning journey for your students, and as well for us teachers, they're quick, easy, and they're effective at indicating progress as well. Before I show you some of these whole class response systems, it's important that I mention, before I introduced any of them, I sort of developed an ethos within my classrooms and out on the field with my students of a no opt-out ethos. And basically what that means is that whenever I give a question, a student must elicit a response. They can't opt out, they can't say I don't know, or they can't not join in the activity. And for any students, for example, if I ask a question and a student says, I don't know, sir, well, what I'll do is I'll move to another student, but I'll always come back to that student to sort of send out the message subliminally that they must answer my questions when I'm posing to the classroom during the activities. And that took a couple of weeks to develop, really. So I'll show you some of the response systems that I use with my classes, and hopefully you can take them away, use them yourself, adapt them, make them better, and then come back and maybe share some ideas with me how you use them. Within my academy, I've shown them during briefings, maybe one a week, and I've seen lots of staff coming back to me sort of saying how well it's impacted the learning in their classroom. And they really are simple, there's not a rocket science to them. Right, so the first one that I sort of developed, and I use this nearly almost all the time in my lessons out on the field, is just using simple hand gestures. And I use these to engage the whole class, and it ensures everybody responds to a question. So all I do is, for example, I may say to the classroom, what level do you think you're at today? Level 3, 4 or 5? And I might do this at the end of the lesson. And I get everybody to sort of respond to me. So they might put 3 fingers up for level 3, 4 fingers up for level 4, 5 fingers up for level 5. And then what that does is it gets everybody to engage in the task, and then I can go and pick on certain students to answer the question about why do you think you're level 3? Why do you think you're level 4? In a classroom, if you look at the bottom picture, I've got simple hand gestures showing A, B and C. So I may do a GCSE class and maybe demonstrate some work on the board and say, what sort of grade do you think this is, A, B or C? They'll elicit a response, and then I'll go and tackle a certain student and ask them why they've given that answer. And there are lots of different ways you can adapt hand gestures. You can make your own hand gestures up. You might have thumbs up, thumbs down, but it just gets every single student eliciting a response. And what it does for you as a teacher is you can see and you can get a snapshot of your class in an instant of where their learning's at. It may be a multiple choice question. Do you think the answer is 1, 2, 3 or 4? And that can be during a mini plenary. And again, if everybody gets the answer right, you can formatively assess that and either move on to the next topic, or if, hopefully not 2 fingers, or if many students get the answer wrong, then you might want to go back to a certain topic, that misconception, and maybe tackle it again. So there's a simple one, hand gestures. Next one. Now this made a big impact on my classroom, and I talked before about the no opt-out system, whereby every student must respond. Now initially when I started teaching this year, a lot of my students would either not put their hand up, or I may ask a student who hasn't got their hand up and he wouldn't have the answer. So I introduced the lollipop system, and all I'd done basically was I put every student's name onto a lollipop stick, and then during the Q&A session in my lesson, during a mini plenary, I would just pull out a name and the student must answer it. Initially, I had students saying, I don't know, but then I would go back to them and make sure they answered it. But 2 lessons in, what I started to see was whenever I pulled a name out of the hat, out of the tub, every student would give me a response. And 9 times out of 10, it was a good response. It wasn't, I don't know, it was they were actually engaging in the question that I'd given to them. And I found it made a big difference. I've actually got them colour coded as well. So I've got green, amber, red sticks, and I put my top ability green, and my middle ability amber, and my bottom ability red. So when I'm asking questions, I might target a question to a certain target group, maybe a low order question and pull out a red lollipop stick, or maybe if it's a high order skill, pull out a green one. I've actually got to a point now where I've just had a GCSE lesson today, whereby I don't use my lollipop sticks no more. I quite simply just pick a student out to answer a question. And I'm finding now every student is answering, and they know that when I ask them a question, they're supposed to answer. And I'm starting to see the whole class responding and eliciting responses. And it's helped to narrow my achievement gap as well, because now it's not just the same student answering, it's all of the students answering. Next strategy. This is something that I actually made. It took me a long time to make them, but I can share this resource with everybody. If you just look at the picture there, I've got something that I made called decision discs. Basically all this is, I just got a ring that you use to put your keys onto, and I got six discs and they're laminated. And on each side of the disc is a different response. So on one side I've got A, B, C and D, true and false. On the other side I've got red, amber, green, and agree, disagree. And I basically just give these little discs out to the students, one each, and then I'll have a multiple choice question on the board, and the students will read the question and then elicit the response with A, B, C or D. Now I've been using that really, it's been great during mini plenaries. I would teach the content, do 6 or 7 questions, multiple choice using the decision discs where students answer the questions. And what I'm starting to see is when the students answer the question, if the correct answer is A, if I see 90% of the class that have put A up and I've maybe got 10% who've put B up, I will then target those few students with a B grade and sort of use question answering to sort of guide them towards the right answer. Or I may pick someone with the right answer to tell somebody with the wrong answer how they came to their conclusions. And it gives you an instant snapshot of whether the students have picked up the content of that certain question. And if they have, move on. If they haven't, then I'll go back and tackle it and make sure that they do get it before I move on. And I've also got the red, amber, green discs. You know, they can indicate their progress of the lesson. Throughout the lesson, you can leave it on the table and just sort of tell me where they're up to, and I can go and tackle any reds moved into ambers and ambers to greens, things like that. And I found they've been of great use to me, like I say, during mini plenaries. And it just indicates progress instantly. So if you were to get someone to observe a lesson who comes in for 20 minutes, you could instantly stop your lesson and just sort of do a mini plenary and get them to elicit the responses ABC, and then anyone who walks into the classroom will see the progress of your class straight away. Next one is just this is how I've used the discs. If you look on the table of the students here, this is during BTEC. I just put the discs on the table and I say to the students, if you're stuck, put it on amber or red, and then if you're okay with your work, leave it on green. And then I can just look across my classroom, see anybody with a green, I can sort of just lead them to the work, or anyone who on a red, I just go in and just go and help them. And I can just see that straight away from the whole class, and it just indicates their progress again. This is not rocket science, but I use it all the time. Mini whiteboards. As you can see from the picture there, you can quite simply see the answers of the students. And for anyone who's coming into a lesson, or for you as a teacher, you can instantly see whether the students have got the answer or not. And I think on the front whiteboard there says Illinois agility test, and that was the correct answer. So I straight away know, right, he's got it, let's move on. But if he's got it wrong, I can go in and help him. And it's just, again, it's a snapshot. Every single student is responding, and you can move your lesson on according to the progress that you've indicated as a teacher. A great formative assessment tool. This one here, I don't know whether it's already been mentioned tonight, but this seems to be doing the rounds with PE teachers, and it's absolutely fantastic. A member of our department put me onto Socrative.com, and again, it's great for eliciting a response from your whole set of students. If you've not used it before, if you just access this website, you can have your laptop or your iPad in front of you, like I've got in that picture there. You create a quiz, a multiple choice one, a short answer quiz, and then you can give out iPods to the students, or you can give laptops to each student, and they just complete your quiz online in live real time, and you get their data back straight away. As soon as they finish their quiz, the data gets sent to your emails, and it marks all of the work for you. It gives you the spreadsheet and shows you how well the students have done. I've found this really useful during mini plenaries and plenaries at the end of a lesson, just to sort of see where my students are at, and it produces a really useful spreadsheet of their progress and how they've done in each activity. I've also used it for exit slips as well. So I'll sometimes just at the on the iPad just have an exit slip quiz made up. I'll have a set of iPods sort of in my room with me, and I might just say, right, okay everybody, let's just review our learning. Grab yourself an iPod each and just complete an exit slip, and on that exit slip it might just have questions like, what grade do you think you've achieved today, multiple choice A, B, C or D, short answer question, explain why you've done this, and then it might have another question, what is your target for next lesson. Once they've completed that, that's their exit slip to get out of the classroom. They give me the iPod when it's completed, and I let them go. And then what that gives me is a spreadsheet of the grade that every student's got during my lesson, and their reflection on that lesson as well. Again, I can see lots of people being using it themselves. Again, it just gives a whole class response and indicates progress in a snapshot. And what's really great is as well, it's quick, easy, and there's no marking needed, which is obviously great for us PE teachers. Right, next one, again, not rocket science, Post-it notes. I always have in my assessment for learning toolbox plenty of Post-it notes of all different shapes, sizes and colours, and I use these quite often in the classroom. And again, back pocket teaching, I might just feel like we need to do a mini plenary to check where the learning's at, pull out the Post-it notes, I might just hand them out and say to everybody, right, here's a question, what's your answer, stick it on the board. Or I might say, write your name on a Post-it note, write down your current level and why you've got that, come and stick it on my iPad, and then I've got it in front of me and I can sort of see where they're at the end of a lesson or during the lesson. You look at the picture on the top right there as well. I use Post-it notes at the start of the lesson as a recap in year 8. And as you can see, the top half of the board, students didn't have great knowledge from the previous year. And then I've done the same activity again at the end of the lesson. And as you can see there, the students' knowledge at the end of the lesson, there's lots of responses there, and it's really helped them and showed the progress in the lesson. So you can see the before and after of the learning in the lesson. And there are loads of ways to use Post-it notes. I'm forever sharing ideas with people from our academy, and I encourage you to do that as well, because Post-it notes are just a fantastic tool for us to have. Exit slips, now I mentioned these before with Socrative. I use exit slips all the time with my classes, and it's routine almost with my GCSE PE classes. And as you can see there, I've got a book of one of my students. On the left-hand page, all I've got is the students writing down the 3 outcomes of the lesson at the start of the lesson. And then I taught the content. Then at the end of the lesson, I give them an exit slip, and they had to write what grade they achieved, sort of write what describes their learning, explain why they got that as well. And then they stick it in the book, and then it really does indicate progress, because you can see the outcomes of the lesson, and you can also see whether the student feels they achieved those outcomes in the lesson as well. And it's just a real snapshot. And again, it's a list and a response from the whole class, and to make sure everyone does it. And if you don't fill it in, you can't leave the classroom. And obviously students are more than keen to sort of fill those in, get them stuck in the books, and sort of look at them in lessons after there as well. It's a great tool for self-reflection and assessment for learning as well. So exit slips, and if you just do a simple Google search, you will find thousands and thousands of different types of exit slips. This is an exit slip. I've seen this from a teacher, an English teacher, who'd done a similar slide to what you see there. So at the end of the lesson, I put this slide up on the board, and I said, which statement best describes your learning today? And then I gave them an exit slip. He wrote down the grade they got, and then you can see there, this student has written, quality never goes out of style. Explain why. Because my work's quality, and that stuff doesn't go out of style. So a little bit of fun with that one as well. And the students enjoyed doing that one in GCSE PE. A really big one here, that is a difficult skill to sort of master, but it's something I've been working on a lot. And with all of the work around marginal gains, I sort of looked at how could I change odd words in the language that I use to elicit different responses from my students. So, for example, quite often in my class, when I'm outside on the field at the end of a lesson during the plenary, I may say, right, with the person next to you, I want you to be able to describe the main coaching points of an overhead clear or a driven pass in football. And I give them 30 seconds to talk about it, and then I bring them back in. And rather than saying to a student, can you describe the main coaching points, I may say, can you tell me what your partner told you about the main coaching points? And what that does is it creates a little 3-way partnership between me and the 2 students, where they've had to listen to their partner and also sort of talk about what their partner said, and it engages more of the class rather than just picking the one student. You're engaging more there. There's also that expectation as well before you do that the students must talk about the learning, because they don't want to be in a situation whereby their partner hasn't said anything to them. There's a little bit of pressure on them as well. And I gain that just by slightly changing the language I've used. Rather than picking one student, maybe pick a selection of students. So describe to me what your partner said. Sometimes as well, it's quite easy to sort of, if you're summarising the learning at the end of a lesson, a lot of the time, or what I found myself doing earlier on in my teaching was, if we're doing a main coaching point of rucking or mauling in rugby, rather than just asking 2 or 3 students to give me a response, I'm doing things like what you see here at the bottom of the slide. I may say, could you show me the Mobot if you know the main coaching points of a ruck? And then that way I will get a response from almost everybody. And then anyone who's given me a Mobot, I'll go in and then I'll ask that student to give me the main coaching points. And it just makes sure everybody responds to you. I may say during my classroom in GCSE PE, demonstrate a Usain Bolt if you feel you can explain the main components of skill. And then you'll get lots of people showing you the Usain Bolt, and I just go in and just ask them. Or you may word it to sort of say, demonstrate the Mobot if you feel you can name the main components, or give me a Usain Bolt if you can explain a type of component. And then that way you're getting a response from everybody, and you can go and pick on one of those and just maybe look at higher or lower order. So just a little thing to think about is just altering the language you use, rather than trying to focus it on one student. Try and alter your questioning so that you engage the whole class as well. Just some pictures here really of a plenary I've done. Now, it would have been quite simple for me, and we were looking at tactics. It would have been quite simple for me to get the whole class in and say to the class, right, what are the strengths of a counter-attack? But I decided not to do that. I wanted to engage more people in that plenary. So I just, on the sheet that you see on the left-hand side, I titled it Team Talk, and I put my questions I was going to ask during my plenary onto the Team Talk sheet, and I gave each group a whiteboard. And rather than me asking the whole class the questions, I just got them in their groups to summarise their learning in 4 different groups, and I got a response from every single student just by listening to their conversations, rather than, again, just the 1 or 2 students responding to my questions at the end of a lesson. Obviously, I've got loads of all these different strategies I use, like whole class response systems. What I found really useful is it's helping me to record assessments and create a portfolio for my classes. Now, typically, with my theory class, I may have a spreadsheet of practical scores and the marking in their books as well. But what I started doing was I thought, is that really the only way that we can assess, by marking books? Because if it is, for me, that only then assesses in one way. So what I started doing was, I might do at the end of a lesson, demonstrate to me whether you think you're A, B or C. So students will demonstrate A, B or C with their hands. And then I'll just take a picture and then I'll upload that picture into a portfolio. So that's a snapshot of where I thought their students' learning was at that point. With the Post-it notes, I'll take a picture of all of the sponsors with their names on it, of the picture of the Post-it notes, put that into the portfolio. That'll go alongside, obviously, the marking in the books and the spreadsheets that I've got. If I'm doing whiteboards, I might take a picture of the whiteboards, their answers, and maybe put a little comment in my portfolio of the question that I asked. Again, this is all things that can go into a portfolio. And if anybody wanted to ever see how you're formatively assessing your class, you can show them exit slips, mark books, Post-it notes, photographs, data from Socrative, photographs of the class. And all this for me is far more useful and more interesting as formative assessment, just rather than a piece of mark work. And you can also do it. A big problem in PE sometimes is getting a snapshot of the learning when you're out on the field. I'll take a picture of the students, of the work, or maybe record some of the answers that they've used, take the iPods out and use them as a portfolio for assessment. And this helps me to really know where they're at and how I can plan future lessons. So just something to think about, really. All the great work that some of us PE teachers do, just find ways of recording your assessments and putting them into a portfolio. It is a lot of work initially, but once you get into the habits of it, it becomes second nature. There's all my strategies done, and sort of just talking from my point of view, really, I've had lots of benefits from my students, and now get lots more engagement, because any question I ask or any sort of task I do, every one of my students is in the habit now of engaging in that activity and giving a response, rather than just the 2 or 3. I'm doing more assessments. I'm constantly formatively assessing my class, and I'm more precise as well. Rather than just taking a snapshot at the end of a lesson or the end of a unit, I'm assessing my students every 15 minutes in every single lesson, and I know exactly where they are. And anybody walking into a lesson can see where my students are at, and it's clearly identified by my whole class response. I'm making clear snapshots of the progress just by doing hand gestures, Post-it notes, whiteboards, Socrative, and getting a snapshot of their progress in an instant, and it's usually accurate as well. And this bottom one here, I can start to see in my students an ethos focused upon continually developing their knowledge and skills. Students understand why I do these whole class responses, because I tell them that I'm doing it so I can see where they're at, so I know the next step in their learning. They don't just see it as a formality, as a task. They truly understand the process behind why I'm assessing them, why I want to know where they're at, and how that will help their learning. And because of that ethos, they're very keen and eager and motivated to sort of show me where they're at, and they're being completely honest with it. Even if they're falling behind, they're being honest with it, not embarrassed. They're very confident to tell me where they're at, because I tell them that's really useful to me, so I can really help improve their learning. So there's my presentation done. So with regards to the whole class response systems, just a summary of all the strategies I've gone through on the left hand side there. What I'll do is, if you would like to gain access to any of these resources, then you're more than welcome. If you just sort of message me on my Twitter, then I will get back to you and I'll send you some of these resources with regards to the decision discs, what I've done with the lollipop sticks, and I can keep in contact with people as well. I can also send you some of the resources of the questions that I've used to elicit responses from my students as well, and the exit slips I've used. And hopefully I can just share everything I've got. People can take them away, use them themselves, make them better, get back to me and share them themselves, because there's loads of scope to develop these strategies, and there's loads of strategies out there that I don't know that I would love to know as well. So if you're interested in sort of developing this, get in touch with me. I'll send you what I've got, and hopefully you can get back to me with some of the things that you've done. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.